So it's finally over. Uh Halo, I this is the first time I've watched like a TV show where I'm actually genuinely happy that the show is over. Like normally I'm like, "Oh man, I can't wait for next season." I can't say that this time. At least well, not entirely because I'm curious to what season 2 will bring just because I want to watch the ship burn. It's like one of those situations because first season was terrible, and I'll have another video about the review about the entire first season. But let's start going into this episode, and again, there's spoilers. So if you haven't seen this, don't watch this. If you have, hey, stick around. So first off, there's the we start off with, or we begin with Chief waking up after the whole artifact explosion, energy burst, whatever you want to call it. But this time it creates a ton of havoc where, like, I guess, like, to the point where it starts making things fall apart. Like, I mean, look at this. It was a cement beam that just fell. So it messed things up. And then of course, Maki is the only one standing, and somehow she overcomes, or she's able to. Well, she kills one guard, but there's another military police here, and then I mean, as far as I know, Maki does not have any type of military or like warrior like training, so I don't know how she's able to somehow. I don't know, beat these people, or at least like, even because like I mean, she has the draw on him obviously in this scene, but it's like, how does she even know how to use a gun? She was taken when she was a kid. I mean, arguably it's not that hard. You just point and shoot or something. But it's like, there's a lot of things that she wouldn't know how to do. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm looking too far into it. Anyway, so she, of course, the one ship that they have is it's a freaking Covenant ship that they have, and obviously she would know how to pilot it, so that's why they threw that kind of MacGuffin, so to say, into the episode. And then the other Spartans also wake up from energy bursts, and they're still holding Kai hostage, or at least like holding a gun to her head, which also begs the question again, why are they using so many different types of weapons? Like here, you have the pistol that is the Halo pistol, but then if I go back to this scene, this is a completely different pistol, or at least it looks different in the sense that um it doesn't look like the Halo pistol, right? Like, I mean, it kind of looks like maybe it's the same gun, or at least like the same base, but they added a few like just attachments, or at least like that cover to this gun here next to um that both Riz and Vanek are using. Like, it looks like they added like a little cover here, and then the hand guard thing, but like I think maybe it's the same base pistols. I don't know why they're different. They shouldn't be, because like this is just the guns that they have in Halo. So regardless if you're a military police or you're a Spartan, you're just using the same stuff. Anyways, um, the first thing that happens is that Chief reveals to Vanek and Riz that, like, hey, um, about basically everyone's past, like our memories are erased. We were kidnapped as children, and now we're Spartans and we're trying to be controlled. Keys walks in and basically like confirms the truth because Vanek doesn't believe him. There's a lot about this scene that like just doesn't quite make sense, because I get it that, like, okay, they were groomed at a young age to just kind of blindly believe in the UNSC, and as Spartans, they're just like, okay, this is who we are and this is what we do. Like, but I feel like normal human being, even without that, like, like that emotion suppression module in their backs, like, wouldn't they be like, hey, you know what, like, I all I remember is being a Spartan And what else? Like, like, I don't remember having parents. I don't remember having a childhood. Like, none of that. Like the none of them ever questioned that. Like, in the what? They're probably in their 20s or 30s, and they none of them questioned that, right? In the time that they've been Spartans, like, they probably only remember everything from the training and up. So it doesn't really make sense why, like, they wouldn't believe something like, oh, like, we were kidnapped as children. Like, that's why in the Halo, like, lore, all the Spartans do remember their childhood. They do remember where they came from, more or less. It's just that since they were abducted or kidnapped at such a young age, they were indoctrinated very well into the UNSC, that they didn't follow the UNSC very blindly, but they still remembered stuff. They didn't, um they weren't put in a situation, or like the memories weren't wiped. So I don't know why they're so gung ho on this, like, kind of narrative that, like, oh yeah, Spartans, they, these are basically super soldiers with no memories, like, on all that jazz. I don't know why they're going with that route. Anyway, so eventually Silver Team kind of makes up and they play nice again. And you have Kai, who goes after Halsey, while the three of them go after Maki. And Creepy Dude is also still around, at least for a little bit. So the beginning action was actually not bad. We see here Kai run after Halsey as she's trying to fly away, and she's just like bolting it, and, like, she's faster than freaking cars. And she jumps onto the whatever the hell this ship is. And the first thing that happens that I'm actually very happy about is the fact that, Creepy Dude tries to hit her, or does hit her, but, like, is it probably immediately regrets it. And then she just owns him. Like, she just grabs him and just like, get the F out of here. And I'm sorry, but I was just like, thank you. Because this creepy little mother effer was just like he, I don't know what his deal was. Like, good on the guy that plays him. He's a good actor. But, this is, but, like, his character was just so creepy, and ugh, like, no one liked him. So good on Kai to just, take his ass out. And then I think so eventually, Halsey escapes or whatever. Kai naturally survives the whole ordeal. And now, with all the shenanigans that's happened at the base, Master Chief has to convince, I guess the higher ups to go after the artifact. And the weirdest, so, like, there's this speech between, I forget what the animal's name is, and Chief, where they talk about, it's like, oh, you have to go not as John, you have to go as Master Chief. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, okay, just because Master Chief is now having feelings or whatever, it doesn't suddenly just stop being a soldier. They have, like, the UNSC has millions of Marines who don't, like, who just because they're not Spartans doesn't mean they're not soldiers, or they're not Marines anymore. Like, because they have feelings, they can still do their job. So I don't know why, like, she makes it such a, like as if, like, Master Chief is so compromised, just because he has, like, feelings back or something. Is like, it doesn't really compute in my brain. Anyway, so they get suited up and they go on this. They take the Condor and they go to, I guess, what is basically the Covenant homeworld, or they don't even say where they go. I don't think, but they go to it, and they go through this, like, warp hole, like, black hole situation where it kind of starts where I guess it distorts gravity and all this craziness, and somehow at some point Master Chief is, like, the only thing that can navigate this, because, like, he goes into, like, this, like, trance mode, and, like, he suddenly gets, like, enlightenment, and it's like, stay on this bearing, like, and Vanek is like, we're gonna die. He's like, no, we won't, we'll make it. And somehow he's, like, become this, like, mystic traveler, like, navigator out of nowhere, because I guess he's a reclaimer. I don't know, Like it makes no sense. And like the one thing it reminds me of, if any of you have ever seen Wing Commander, there's like this old sci-fi movie based off of the Wing Commander game. It stars Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard. Not a good movie, but in that movie, um, Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character, he's part of this like um, group of humans called the Pilgrims, who they were like natural navigators. They can feel like um, they can like navigate with their basically with feelings. Like they don't need like instruments. They don't need like supercomputers to navigate around around the cosmos. Like they can just feel it. They knew where like quasars were and like all this other quantum physics stuff I don't understand. And like basically they can, and they're the ones that charts, the chart of the stars. And I'm like, is this the same situation with Master Chief here? Is he like one of these like pilgrims? Like what the hell is going on? Obviously they're two different universes, so they're not the same people, but it's like I feel like that's what they're getting at is like Master Chief is being built into like this like person that could even navigate like crazy anomalies in space. So I don't even know what the hell that's about. Anyway, so like the third act they eventually come into is basically the Chief and Silver Team getting onto the Covenant planet, and they drop in. That was a pretty dope thing. Like, they're like, they all four of them drop in, no parachute naturally, which is part of the game. At least they that's what they stay true to. It's like they can drop from any height and they'll just survive, right? That's always been part of the thing. The first thing that happens is that when they drop down, they just crush like a grunt. And like I wish yeah, this poor guy, he's just like kind of chilling there, and Chief just is like stomps on him like Mario. Like and he's just like and I wish there was more with the grunts in terms of like the funny like lines that they pull off. I wish like some of these grunts like knew English and was like and then they would like scream something, but that doesn't happen. But Venek does pick up the needler that this grunt has, and is just like, oh yeah, and is like goes to town once the battle starts. They also eventually find out that this Halsey is not the real Halsey, and uh, Miranda figures out that like, oh, it's a clone, and the real Halsey is actually somewhere else. So it's like they realize that Halsey pulled a fast one on them. So that was actually pretty clever, I have to say. And then we finally get to see more of the prophets, like their treachery. Like one thing that they go over is like, um, they're basically using Maki to as a way to unlock Forerunner technology because humans are the only ones that can actually use it. So the idea is that they're just gonna use her to activate Halo in order to wipe out the humans, but they're not gonna keep her around like as if she's some savior. She's actually just a pawn in the Prophets games. But yeah, anyways, so Master Chief eventually, or the Silver Team. Actually, before I talk about Silver Team, one thing I do finally like is that the look of the elites are finally looking proper. They look like what they're supposed to do in the game. Now, these look like arguably a little bit more elites, I guess, or maybe a little bit more higher up, and like maybe they're like the royal guard or something. But their helmets, I'm sorry, this is like a blurry picture. But the helmets are actually a little bit more reminiscent of what the elites look like from the Halo games. They're not just kind of like a comb, like roly poly type shape going on. It's more of like arches in the back. Looks a little bit more, just a little more badass in terms of the design. So I definitely like that more. Um, And then we go back here. The final battle finally starts, right? So you have Chief, Vanek, Kai, and Riz just like shooting the living crap out of the Covenant. One thing I kind of I find a little bit more interesting that I notice in the show is that everyone's HUD is a little different. Like, you see the armor, whatever BIOS, it's a Mjolnir. Everyone's HUD is a little different in the sense that They're how like the shield is portrayed. No, that's not the right. But like the shield gauge is a little different in each helmet. You know, Chief is different from Vanix. Vanix is different from each one. I thought that was pretty cool. I finally realized what the heck this is. It's each of the freaking Spartans. Like 117 is Chief, and then you have I think that's Vanek, and then you have Riz here. All like their numbers are like, oh, these are my teammates. Like I'm part of the team that has 117, Spartan 028, and Spartan 134 on my team. I finally realized what that was. It took me a while. Sorry. And then again, it shows grenades and it shows other BIOS meters. It even shows like a little distance meter, which makes sense because since Kai is a sniper, she would have this. Um, and then it has other little bit readings like comms open. I think those are like kind of nice touches. I feel like that they throw in here that you don't get in the game. So I think these is actually good stuff that I am appreciative. And then also, of course, her weapon is the sniper rifle with 3 rounds in the mag. So let's see. I mean, what else that happens really around here when like the things get crazy? You have they start getting attacked by hundreds and hundreds of elites and other basically the entire Covenant army. Ooh, other things I noticed that wherever they are, I think they're in San Helios, on the planet because I don't because correct me if I'm wrong because just because a lot of the statues they have elites here. They have these elite statues that kind of line this thing, this kind of walkway. So I feel like they're on San Helios because it just seems that's where all like this kind of ruins kind of play towards. So I feel like that's where they are, and the San Helios is where the elite's homeworld is. But yeah, all these mofo's are just running up. Arguably, the CGI in this last fight isn't the greatest. Because when the team starts fighting, and these like kind of fight scenes, they don't look the most smooth, like because it definitely looks very green screen in the sense that like okay they clearly built the set here, but the background and everything they don't really mesh well together. It definitely looks like they're in a studio. Doesn't look like they're on like an alien planet, so it looks a little funky. And they're not only just fighting grunts. Well, so far it looks like they're not just fighting grunts, elites, but also brutes. And apparently, the brute also shows up, where apparently this is supposed to be Atriox. So, I guess he's not or what is that called? He's not a Forsaken yet at this point. He is actually still part of the Covenant. So this is supposed to be Atriox, and he just goes to town on the Spartans. I believe we're looking at Riz's helmet here because if you look at Riz's helmet, she has no more grenades, but her shield gauge is on the side here of her visor, and it's like instead of in the middle like the other Spartans. But other things are still the same. You have the armor, Mjolnir, you have the, you know, direction gauge or whatever. I don't know what they called, but the compass, basically. Sorry, I'm just like kind of stupid right now. But I like how they add a little other things like, right in front of her, you see Master Chief and you see Atriox right there, like and then you see where Vanek and Riz are right off to the side. It's almost like perfect. Like whoever attention to detail here is like almost like really good. And then you have the enemies in the off right for the radar. So I felt that this was really good. So according to the measurements here, I guess they're about 20 to 30 meters away. So very cool. Like I thought that was just like kind of like a nice touch in terms of what we're looking at here. So of course, like Master Chief, he goes to town on the elites, and all he's fighting with is a pistol and his trusty, assault rifle, and he just like destroys all these brutes. and their hammers. So I thought that was a good depiction of the just how elite Chief still is, even though he has his emotions and memories back, which I still don't understand why they threw that in there. But I'm beating a dead horse with that now. Anyways, so eventually Chief or I guess Maki gets like, I don't know, some, I guess she really is like in love with, or at least like has feelings for Chief, because she sees him getting like his ass kicked by Atriox, and in order to save him, she touches the artifact, and again it releases this like pulse or like shockwave that apparently just blows everyone away, and to the point where like it blows elites just off whatever hill that they're on. A lot of them still stay still, but a lot of them are gone. But she holds on to for so long that it reveals a star map. And from what I can tell, it looks like it revealed every single Halo ring, because like, it has some constellations, but you can see here, like, I mean, either these are just markers for other Forerunner things, or they are telling us of where all the Halo rings are, all the installations. So because one of the prophets say, oh, the star map is revealed of like where we're supposed to go. So I'm thinking that some of these are actually where the Halo rings are, because from the look of the markers, not all of them are the same, and some have like little number designations, whereas others don't. So I'm thinking this is where like all the Halo rings are, but they're kind of scattered in a way that's odd. And I forget how many rings that they're supposed to be. I think there's supposed to be 9 of them, but I'm not 100% of them. 100% sure. Anyway, so they reveals the star map, and um, of course, Chief gets pulled into this trance again, and while he's in the trance, Silver Team is getting their butt kicked. Um, and one thing that happens is that Kai kills Maki. So that was like one of the big, I guess, things about this episode, is that I guess Maki is not coming back for season 2. I thought she was going to be a part of the next season. In terms of like, okay, maybe her role has a bit more to play into the Covenant versus human war, where maybe she was, she turns her back um, on the Covenant because they find out that she's just a pawn, and then she's gonna be like, you know what, I'm gonna now use all my knowledge of all this craziness to help the humans beat the Covenant. But that's not the case, because she gets killed. Um, and then basically so again, Chief, kind of fights off a few more um, enemies, and the weird, okay, and then at one point, Riz gets stuck with a sticky grenade and gets blown up. I mean, she survives, but she's messed up. Now, the biggest problem I have with this episode is not the fighting and not the action, but this next part where basically Chief relinquishes his body to Cortana, and Cortana gets to take over. And like, because she's an AI, she can like basically do like a million tasks at once. To the point where not only is she controlling Chief, she's also controlling the Condor that's like in orbit. And so, which I don't know why they didn't have as air support from the get go. It made no sense. Like, okay, so because like Cortana could be the 5th member that controls the freaking Condor in order to give them some cover, but for some reason it comes in last minute, because when Cortana takes over Chief, she basically is able to like do everything, like do everything all at once. Like the entire screen goes kind of ones and zeros in this binary code, and now because like it's Cortana fighting and not Chief, like she's able to do all these crazy moves where like he goes he picks up two weapons and just starts like shooting people left and right. Like, have you ever seen the movie Equilibrium and the gun kata? That's basically what goes on here. Like, Chief just starts like shooting everyone around him without looking, and I thought it was like freaking hilarious, like on just what's happening. Um, and like to me it kind of makes like no sense, but it was just, I thought it was hilarious in terms of how he was just like super like optimized now. And then again, like the Condor also comes in and basically helps fight off the onslaught, which again, why wasn't that thing doing that already? Like, Cortana could have been helping with the Condor from the get-go, but no, they decided to throw it in last minute, even though it should have been providing air cover or like air support from the start. Like, that would have made so much more like at least military strategic sense, because that could have been Cortana's job. I mean, and since she's an AI, she can be at two places at once, so she could have been helping Chief with pointing out enemies, but also using the Condor and using its forward gun to fight off the Covenant, because it clearly is like it's that thing smacks. So I don't know why they weren't doing that from the get go. It just made, again, like it's stupidity. But at the end of the day, they end up. I don't know what the prophets are doing, but they're like freaking useless, clearly, because they're just like, oh no, Chief is making off with the artifact. All right, we'll just float. I mean, technically, in the games, they don't do anything anyways. They're not like warriors or anything. They're just like lazy people. They're like, they don't do anything. So it's not surprising that they would just let them do whatever. But I guess they also were like, well, we have the star map, so who cares? Like, if they take the artifact. Well, I guess the whole point was to basically show them where the Halo rings are. So they have the information. They're like, yeah, whatever. Like, they can take it and go. And then eventually they leave, and I guess, and that's kind of like the main. And the silver team goes home. Luckily, everyone survives. I thought they were gonna kill off one of the Spartans, like, for to be honest, but Riz survives. She gets messed up, as you can see here, and Chief, or well, Cortana cauterizes the wound by using oxygen and or some of the oxygen supply to cauterize her wounds. I'm assuming she'll survive. Um, and then like that's basically the episode, and it ends with like the realization that Halsey is actually gonna be taken off world by, I guess, other people that she's working with, and she's now a fugitive. So in terms of, and then she starts also monologuing. So I'm not entirely sure where this is gonna end, because also the other thing that they end up doing is like, okay, so here's like the big cliffhanger is that now Chief is no longer Chief, I guess. So because right as a right this point, like when the show ends, Cortana is the one that's controlling Chief, and Cortana didn't want to do it because she was like, I don't know if you know I can bring you back. So I'm like, so that's the big cliffhanger, because at this point, like, it's still Cortana, it's not Chief. So I'm guessing they're kind of insinuating that, like, oh, we don't know if Cortana will still be a part of Chief at the beginning of next season. Maybe this is how they play into the whole thing, that they keep Cortana on a chip, right? Because instead of like injecting Cortana into Chief, maybe they're gonna eventually, like, okay, in order to take Cortana out of Master Chief, they're gonna download her into a chip. So instead of her being in him, now Cortana will be just in his helmet, like the way the show shows, or like the way the video game shows it. So maybe that's the case, in terms of what's going to happen next season. But yeah, like at the end of this, I didn't really like how they went to that direction of like, oh, now we don't know if Chief is coming back. Of course he's gonna come back. They just need some kind of plot line to, I guess, maybe show why they're like a good, how they can work together so well, or I don't know, something about it. Um, Another thing, I guess, like a little Easter egg is, at one point Chief's visor gets cracked, which is kind of reminiscent of Halo 5, when when Spartan Locke cracks Chief's visor. So I don't know if that's like a call to that incident, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Like I guess it could call. Anyways, but overall, I thought this episode was not good again. Like it's just there's just so many things that like just did not make a whole lot of sense in terms of how things would like just play out. And the whole like this whole scene of like this battle could have been so much more interesting in terms of like how effective the Spartans were against like a group of elites and grunts. You know, I feel like there could have been more, but they were overpowered by the brutes like fairly easily. So I don't know what the deal with that is. But anyways, that's my take on the last episode of Halo. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments. I will be coming out with a full review of the entire season, my thoughts on it, and also just like tidbits of where I think my criticism of like just the writing and all that stuff in general. I'll have that video out in a few days or so. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and check back for the next video. All right, guys. Thank you so much.